from where you sit. Welcome to another exciting episode of Trading Bell. It is a new year, a new season, and first off on this episode, we shall be hosting none other than Rebecca Miano, who is the Managing Director and CEO of KenGen, that is the Kenya Electricity Generating Company. Rebecca is the first female CEO to lead such an organization, and we'll be getting to hear from her what is her grand plan for the organization, how will she steer the company into more profits in 2019. Well, if you don't know Rebecca, let's take a quick look at her profile.
Mrs. Rebecca Miano is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Electricity Generating Company PLC, KenGen. She is the first woman to hold the position since incorporation of the company in 1954. Rebecca Miano joined KenGen in 1998 and worked in various roles, rising through the establishment to the level of acting managing director and CEO before she was confirmed to the position in November 2017. She also previously worked for the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, KPLC, which adds up to her 24 years plus experience in the energy sector. She was the founding patron of KenGen's Pink Energy Forum, which was formed out of the need to encourage and facilitate female employees to grow boldly to their potential in line with their respective professions. Mrs. Miano is a registered certified public secretary Kenya with the Registration of Public Secretaries Board and won the company's Secretary of the Year status in 2010 under the Champions of Governance Awards. Mrs. Miano is also a commissioner for oaths since 2001, a notary public since 2003, and a finalist for chartered arbitrator. She was also awarded the Order of the Grand Warrior of Kenya in 2010 by the head of state in recognition of her outstanding services rendered to the nation.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Trading Bell. I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Abby.
All right, Rebecca, it's our first interview with you since you became CEO, and perhaps KenGen has been very active in the Securities Exchange, being a listed company. And what sort of impact has this had on the operations of the parastatal, as well as how you run your governance issues?
I'll go back to pre-listing days, prior to 2006, when KenGen was not listed.
Sure.
Kenyans will remember the situation then, where demand was much more than the supply of power. We do recall there were outages frequent, there was power rationing, and most of the times we would get power only 3 days a week. So that is the picture before then.
I remember those days.
Yes, but upon listing, we had to think outside the box, do a transformation, get to the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and we thank the NSC for providing a platform and an opportunity to enable us to raise funds so that we could undertake projects, and especially those that are not reliant on hydro. As you are aware, hydro is really dependent on weather, and every time there was a drought then, obviously there wouldn't be power. And through the NSC, we have been able to diversify and get into geothermal big time. And geothermal does not depend on the weather. And so we have reliability in the supply of power. We are proud to note that currently we have adequate power, and outages and rationing are things of the past.
It's more of a throwback, as the younger generation would say.
Yes.
And Rebecca, you steered the legal department, and of course rising through to now being the CEO. And of course, many of our viewers perhaps do not really understand the mandate of KenGen. Some confuse it with what Kenya Power is doing. Could you just give us, in a nutshell, what KenGen does?
The main mandate of KenGen is to generate power and sell it in bulk to Kenya Power. Then the off-taker distributes that power to the suppliers. It is sort of a retail, but we are the wholesalers of power. Yes.
And looking at the numbers currently, the installed power capacity in the country stands at about 2,300 megawatts, give or take. And of course, the government has an ambitious plan towards hitting 5,000 megawatts. And of course, this has been a major area of concern, especially when it comes to the businesses who are in dire need of power. And as KenGen, power generation is not a cheap affair by all estimations. And of course, from where you sit, talk to us about your plans for 2019 from a generation standpoint.
Of the 2,300 megawatts installed capacity in the country, KenGen contributes 1,631 megawatts. That's a big chunk of what we contribute, and therefore we are the biggest power producer in the country. And going forward, we would like to retain being a major player in the market. And you're right, Abby, power generation is not a cheap affair. World over, it is capital intensive. KenGen has had good relationship with the DFIs. Through the support of the government, we have been able to raise funds. We have been able to have affordable financing for our projects, and therefore that has made the very expensive venture to be quite affordable for this country.
All right. And Rebecca, in your latest trading results, you registered a growth in electricity sales of about 29.3 billion, but a 12% drop in net profits to 7.9 billion shillings. What do you see in the horizon now that we are seeing the weather has been pretty good in terms of the water levels in the dams? At the same time, geothermal exploration is getting a lot of support from various countries when it comes to clean energy.
Yeah. The growth in our sales was attributed to the geothermal. We had more sales from geothermal, that's why we registered the growth. The slight drop in PBT was mainly because of tax. In the previous years, we had tax deductions because we then commissioned new plants. But in 2018, we had no plant for commissioning, and therefore we did not get a tax relief. Our costs remained constant for both years, and so that explains the small drop. Going forward, when we have good weather, we generate more hydro that is more affordable. Together with geothermal, you will find that almost 90% of the power consumed in the country is then green, geothermal and hydro, and then we reduce on the expensive thermals that use very expensive fuel, and that makes power affordable.
All right. Speaking about making power affordable, I understand as a company you're planning to scale up the capacity you generate by about 756 megawatts. Just share with us your strategic plan towards this, and how will you finance this, looking at the situation where the company is, especially when it comes to debt financing?
Of our installed capacity, 1631, we intend to grow it by about 720. Most of the projects are at various stages of implementation and procurement, and I'll start with All Carrier 5. That's a 165 megawatt. We intend to commission it before July 2019. We then have All Carrier 1 Unit 6. We broke ground for early last month, and His Excellency the President was the chief guest. Others are Meru, 80 megawatts. We are doing a rehab of All Carrier 1, our oldest geothermal. And so with that mix of the projects that we are implementing, we shall inject renewable energy into the grid, and also more affordable power. And as KenGen, we are keen on implementing projects that are cheaper, that will then have an impact on the cost of power.
All right.
On financing, we have financing in place for most of the projects.
How much are we looking at?
Most of these projects, we are looking at $9 billion US.
Right, that's
Yes.
quite a substantial amount.
Yes,
That's over around 90 billion Kenyan shillings.
yes,
All right.
yeah.
And in terms of this financing, of course, if you look at world over, the model has been you get dollar-denominated loans, and
Yes.
there's been there's been a passionate campaign by the principal secretary in charge of energy, that is Engineer Joseph Njoroge, towards ensuring that the loans are not denominated in foreign currency, but in local currency. What impact will this have on the cost of financing the projects in the long run?
I want to confirm that this will not be the first time that KenGen is financing projects. And in 2009, KenGen issued a public infrastructure bond
Correct.
that was local, Kenya denominated, 12% coupon. We have serviced that loan, and the final redemption is this year. The projects that we have now are dollar denominated. Some of them that we have concluded the financing. However, we are still open and looking at the local market
Yes.
to see how much we can raise in Kenya shillings. And we are open to even going back to the Nairobi Securities Exchange to raise more. We have been there 3 times. The biggest IPO, you recall, 2006.
Yes.
The biggest PIBO, 2009. And the latest 2016 rights issue. So we are always taking advantage of the locally available funds to ensure that our debt portfolio is not 100% foreign denominated, but also local denominated.
All right.
And we are looking at that for even our current project pipeline.
Okay, and let's expand the conversation further, because it is believed that adoption of geothermal energy eventually will lead to cheaper power costs. How true is this? Because each time I visit the Olkaria plants in Naivasha, and you see the scale of investment, and eventually when geothermal is on the grid, and if you look at the financing costs, it sort of helps you to understand that if we adopt geothermal as a country, we shall, in the near term, address our power costs. But how true is this, and how practical is it?
I can confirm geothermal could be expensive at the initial stages because of the exploration and drilling.
Yes.
But eventually, the final product, it is cheaper, it is more sustainable, the resource is available, not dependent on the weather. And so in that regard, geothermal can be said to be cheaper. Other sources may be cheaper at the initial stages, but maintaining and operating and maintenance is much more expensive. And so it is true, geothermal in the long run is the cheapest form of energy. And this country is lucky to be endowed with such a natural resource. We have it in abundance. The whole country has an estimated resource of 10,000 megawatts. That is huge.
That's
so
quite
you
substantial.
that will maintain even generations to come if it is exploited at the right time. And
right.
so the way to go, and in line with our strategy, it is a geothermal-led strategy for the reasons I have given you.
All right. And how important is it for Kenya to diversify her energy sources? When we go to our neighbors like South Africa, which has an installed capacity of 40,000 megawatts, which has been split towards, there's of course nuclear power, there's wind energy, then there's hydro. And as a country, if you're to do the matrix, how much should geothermal contribute, especially now that we have over 10,000 capacity to generate as a country?
Yes, the energy mix and diversification is very important. I'll go back to years back. The generation in this country was mainly hydro. Every time there was no drought, there wasn't enough water, or we have a drought, we wouldn't have electricity. And that is clear. But we have seen what diversification can do. Since we started generating from geothermal, we have more reliable, more steady supply of power. And also we have wind. This country now generates from wind. We are looking at solar. Of course, we have some thermal for system stability and voltage support. And so the energy mix and diversification is critical to ensure you have reliability, rather than depend on only one source that can be affected.
All right.
Of course, geothermal will take a lead. It is available, it is reliable, and the way to go is to have probably the base load or the biggest percentage to be geothermal, followed by other sources of energy.
Okay. And as we come to the tail end of the discussion, Rebecca, and from the CEO's standpoint, I just want to understand, how is it running such an organization which is heavily male dominated? Each time I'm out in the field, I meet male engineers, and I'm so excited actually that you are at the helm of the organization. But what are some of the perceptions and the various school of thoughts that people have, especially about women in leadership, where we are seeing a revolution happening across the world, where in Germany we have a female prime minister. When you come to East Africa, there's a growing number of female CEOs. How do you feel about this issue in the region?
The world, the region, the country, and the company are all ready to recognize skills, abilities, leadership, and qualifications rather than anything else. So in such a case, it is not the gender that wins. It is skills, it is abilities. And I want to tell everybody, and especially my fellow women, that there is always an opportunity. If you're courageous, if you do the best, if you're very good at what you do, opportunities are there. At KenGen, we have recognized the need to encourage women to take up technical jobs and leadership, and we have formed a forum which we call Pink Energy.
All right.
And in that forum, we encourage women to do their best. We facilitate them with mentorship, with coaching, and we have seen women are taking up much more leadership positions, many more technical jobs, and that's the way to go.
All right.
I am a product of given an opportunity. I've been given an opportunity because I presented my skills and abilities, and here I am, accepted and doing well. Yes.
And Rebecca, I'm quite intrigued by the fact that you've brought out the reality that when women are incorporated in society, we get better results. I'm sure you have quite a number of examples to share with us.
Yes, women have a lot to offer in leadership. It reminds me of the example of the safety airbags in vehicles that was designed by a man. And the man designed this airbag that was big to fit into a man's chest, and there were more accidents. Then they incorporated a woman into the designing, and the final airbag is now safer. It is able to accommodate both men and women. It is also said that the first pacemaker that was manufactured to assist people with heart problems was designed by a man. Again, it was big and masculine and could not fit into the tender hearts of women. And when they incorporated a woman into the design, that issue was sorted out. And now we have pacemakers that are able to assist both men and women. So it is true that women have their contribution into design, into science, into every field, and even into leadership.
All right.
Women have the ability to have intuition in decision making, so they complement men very well. And so the more women we have, that gives a better product in both leadership, in science, and in all the fields.
Such a nugget there you've shared with us. And Rebecca, just as we wrap up, I just want to know what inspires you, what keeps you going, you know? What is that one thing that makes you wake up each morning, drive all the way to Parklands to come to work, as well as who inspires you?
What inspires me to wake up every morning, drive to work, is knowing that my contribution affects the economy of this country, it affects the people of Kenya, it can make a difference to my fellow women, to the children, and to everybody. I am inspired by my role models who I have been following, and I have mentors that I look up to. I also realized that I am a role model. There are many women, there are many girls who look upon me. They want to see what I am doing. And knowing that I can be an inspiration that will make a difference in somebody's life, that makes it for me and keeps me motivated and makes me want to do even more.
All right.
Yes.
And Rebecca, I just want to get your parting shots now that we are wrapping up the interview, especially on those women out there who are hell-bent on believing that they can never rise and take over such positions of influence like you are currently holding. And what would be your message to them, knowing very well that what a man can do, a woman can do better?
Yes, I would encourage the women to be courageous. Come out, apply for those jobs. When you see them, apply for the jobs. Be very good at what you do, sharpen your skills, and let us all be there available to serve and show that we can. And surely we do.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we will. And
All
we
right.
have done it.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Such a
Thank
pleasure
you, Abby.
having you on the program.
It's my pleasure.
And of course, we're looking forward to just seeing how the company will be performing. And of course, I'm very keen on that program of mentorship that you did talk about, where you're mentoring women in the science-based courses.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abby.
We've been speaking there to Rebecca Miano, the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of KenGen. And she's quite passionate about leadership, as you've heard from her. And of course, a lot of projects in the pipeline that will be able to see the cost of electricity being addressed in the long term.
Right now, what we are watching is what our foreign is going to do. If they start coming into the market, and that is now linked to what sort of results we are going to get as the banks start in the next few weeks telling us how they performed in 2018, then that interest is what is now going to tell us what direction the market will take.
It's time now for the markets analysis on Trading Bell. Welcome back. My name is Malika Kazia. I'm joined by Samuel Gishohi, our financial analyst this week. Welcome, Samuel.
Thank you for having me.
All right, fantastic. So just before, of course, we went on the break, we had Abby Agina speaking to Mrs. Rebecca Miano, the Managing Director and CEO of KenGen. But moving on from that conversation now, let's look at the markets before we even get into our movers, gainers and losers of this week compared to last. Of course, this week we had the very tragic Riverside attack. And, looking at the markets, have you seen any particular movement in relation to that attack? Anything sudden, any kind of other movements that you have noticed?
Yeah, true. It was a tragic event, and our hearts go out to the families who are bereaved or suffered any injuries in that occurrence. Going back to the markets, usually we see a blip, or you would usually have an effect on the economy and on the market, which is really what the terrorists intend.
True.
However, so far, you may have a delayed effect. Sometimes it happens instantly, which we haven't seen. Today, the market continued to show, signs of recovery. Of course, I think it was in the way it was handled. The fact that it was very quickly resolved, unlike what happened in the past at Westgate. Also, there was a lot of communication from the government and the powers that be about what was happening, what the status was, etc., which goes a long way to give investors, some peace of mind and feel that they're in a safe space in Kenya. So I believe that all that was done very well, and that has helped to curb the panic that you normally see in markets. We haven't had any of the foreign travel advisories, for example, regarding or based on what happened. So that is also a plus, because whenever there are travel advisories, then it also affects business. So we haven't had that much problem so far.
Okay,
yes.
That's positive for sure. And as
positive,
you say,
and it just means it shows that we are coming of age in terms of dealing with such issues. Yes.
Yeah, and as you said, no travel advisory so far. We also saw NASA leader Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka come out and say that we'd rather not. We are urging our international partners to not issue travel advisories. Everything is fine. So, like you've mentioned, it seems to be having a direct impact on the investor confidence, and it is still maintained. So that is definitely a plus that we are looking at.
True.
But now that we look at our statistics here, we're seeing some of our top gainers like Ken Kobil actually coming up by 11.20%. Any thoughts on that?
Well, of course, whenever there is currently a corporate action on Ken Kobil, there is a cash call it's being bought out really,
yes.
And the shareholders have been offered to sell their shares at 23 shillings. And it was trading, I think, last week at 19 shillings and 50 cents or thereabouts. Now it has gone up to around 20, 21 shillings. And that means there is speculation happening. You'll always see that sort of volatility. Some people think if I buy it at 20 shillings or 21 shillings and I'll get 23 shillings at the end of the day, it makes sense. So that, of course, is one of the reasons for the speculation. We do expect now, of course, in the next period now to see quite a bit of movement there or interest, because then when there's a corporate action, there's more information coming out about a company on the market. So until the suspension of trading, then that means that we are going to see quite a bit of volatility. Okay. However, it's really speculative because 1 or 2 shillings gain is not that much of a percentage.
Okay, all right. In fact, as you say that, let's now move forward to the losers that we've seen this week. Any of these that stand out to you specifically?
Well, not really. I think what you can see in the gainers and losers, well, one positive on the gainers, I can see Centum there and Ken Kobil, which are the larger and more liquid companies. Whereas if you look at the rest of the companies sitting on that list, Liberty Kenya, East Africa, Everready, Umeme, I think IGADS, they're really very liquid and very low volume. And that is an indicator of where the market is. We are currently in a trough. If you look at the index, you're going to see that in as much as we have seen a bit of upward movement in the last few days, it's a very small percentage. It's nothing. It's not significant. And if you look at the market since around October, November, we've been in a trough. My view is that we have hit bottom, which is a very good time to be buying, because then if fund managers are still off the market, foreigners are still a bit hesitant, especially with the lockdown in the American government. There's a deadlock over there. So that all brings to a stagnation of markets. It's across the globe, but here we've had it for a while because our market was in a bear run. So that is a sign that the market is looking for a new direction. Once a trend is established, then we can expect it, since we are at bottom, is more likely to go up.
Okay.
As companies start to announce their results, investors start getting more interest in the market, more demand and more liquidity starts happening, then we will see more happening. On the movers, you're going to see the usual suspects. Safaricom, KCB, KenGen, Cooperative, Centum. Now those will continue to be the movers. The question is, which ones will pick up when the market starts to recover, as people come back from holiday mode.
Okay,
Yes.
very, very interesting. Thank you for that analysis. And as you mentioned, the NSE 20 share index as well, we're seeing a significant change, I would say, of an increase in that by 2.70%. For the last couple of months, it's been in the negative. So any insight into that?
Well, we are seeing a balance now. We had consistent selling by foreigners. Foreigners take about 70 to 80% of our market.
Okay.
So if foreigners are selling, or then they sell, they are selling more than they're buying, then chances are the market will be going down. And we've had the last 10, 11 months was consistent selling by foreigners.
Okay.
And that is what has pushed even the likes of Safaricom, which has been very resilient over the last 5-6 years, and has been going up consistently, now looking, hitting bottom. So now we are seeing a balance. Suddenly there's almost equal buying and selling. So every day you'll see a blip up or down, just very insignificant, depending on whether they were buying more or selling more. The local investors are a bit fatigued, so they're not really trading that much.
Okay.
So right now what we are watching is what are foreigners going to do. If they start coming into the market, and that is now linked to what sort of results we are going to get as the banks start in the next few weeks, telling us how they performed in 2018, then that interest is what is now going to tell us what direction the market will take.
All right. Thank you very much, Samuel. A lot of insights coming there from you.
You're welcome.
All right. As always, a pleasure to have you tuned in, of course, to the Trading Bell. If you have any comments, any questions, any thoughts, let us know through our social media handles. They're appearing on your screen right now. And we'll catch you next time. This has, of course, been the Trading Bell.